We're often afraid to admit it, but deep down, many of us crave relationships that slowly suffocate our sense of identity, leaving us feeling powerless and trapped in a cycle of codependency. This twisted desire for connection stems from our primal need for validation, a desperate longing to be seen and understood by others, even if it means sacrificing our autonomy and self-worth. Perhaps you've seen this pattern play out in your own life, or maybe it's someone you love, but it's almost impossible to resist the allure of a toxic partner who feeds our ego and fills the void within us. In this video, we'll peel back the layers of this dark allure, to reveal the hidden patterns of attraction that fuel the dark side of romance and relationships, and expose the uncomfortable truth that rarely gets spoken out loud. We often deceive ourselves into believing that our intense attraction to someone is driven by genuine chemistry, but in reality, it's frequently a desperate attempt to fill a void within us, a craving that can only be satiated by the validation of another person. At the core of romantic obsessions lies a profound insecurity, a deep-seated fear of being unworthy, unlovable, or unexceptional, and our attachment to the object of our desire serves as a constant reminder that we're worthy of love and acceptance. What we call love is often nothing more than a quest for control, a desire to mold and shape someone else into the perfect reflection of ourselves, a desperate attempt to compensate for our own perceived shortcomings and imperfections. When we surrender to the all-consuming allure of an unattainable person, we're not really captivated by their essence, but rather by the promise of what they represent: a fleeting sense of purpose, a temporary reprieve from the crushing weight of our own inadequacies, and the illusion of a connection that can never truly be real. The darker side of attraction reveals itself when we're willing to sacrifice our own autonomy, our emotional well-being, and even our sense of self in the name of winning the approval and affection of someone who may not even be worthy of our desire. By delving into the shadow of validation, we begin to see that our relationships are often not about the other person, but about our own ego's perpetual need for validation, our insecurities, and our deep-seated fears of being alone, unloved, and unappreciated. At its core, the cult of control is built upon a fundamental misunderstanding of our own motivations, driven by an insatiable need for validation. We're often more terrified of being powerless and vulnerable than we are of actually losing control. When we crave power over another person, we're usually compensating for a deep-seated sense of inadequacy and insecurity. This unrelenting pursuit of control is a desperate attempt to shield ourselves from feelings of fear, anxiety, and shame. The irony, of course, is that our actions only serve to reinforce the very power dynamics we're trying to escape. But, by acknowledging this dark pattern, we can start to break free from its hold, and instead cultivate genuine connections built on mutual respect and trust. When we're drawn to someone with the potential to fulfill deep-seated insecurities, we may convince ourselves that our attraction is purely driven by love, yet in reality, it's a desperate cry for validation. As we become increasingly invested in this relationship, we often downplay red flags and rationalize behaviors that would normally be unacceptable, because deep down we're trying to prove to ourselves that we're worthy of love and attention. This toxic dynamic perpetuates the very insecurities we're trying to overcome, creating a cycle of emotional dependence and codependency. One of the most insidious aspects of romantic addiction is the sense of control it gives us, the illusion that if we can just convince the other person to love us, we'll finally be whole and complete. In reality, this is just a form of self-deception, where we're using someone else's love as a band-aid to cover up our own deep-seated emotional wounds. Our ego, fueled by a desperate need for affirmation, can make us believe that we're the victim, that the other person is to blame for our unhappiness, when in fact, we're complicit in this dance of deception, perpetuating a cycle of dysfunction that we're powerless to break free from. When we wear a mask of vulnerability, it's often a clever disguise for our genuine desire to be validated, to be seen and understood by someone else, rather than taking responsibility for our own inner fulfillment. But beneath the surface, there's a profound fear of being hurt, of being rejected, and of losing control, isn't there? We're drawn to people who reflect our own shadow, our own deep-seated insecurities and fears, because they trigger a primal desire within us to merge, to become one, to heal each other's wounds. The irony is, our desperate need for connection is rooted in a fundamental denial, a refusal to confront the emptiness and isolation that lies at the heart of our own ego. In our quest for intimacy, we often mistake the high of infatuation for genuine connection, when in reality, we're merely seeking a reflection of our own validation, a temporary reprieve from the crippling anxiety of being alone. The mask of vulnerability, far from being a sign of openness, is actually a shield, a defensive mechanism to deflect the very intimacy we claim to crave, a clever self-deception woven into the fabric of our own desires. And yet, it's only by confronting the dark, twisted corners of our own psyche, and facing the fears that lie beneath, that we can truly begin to heal, to break free from the destructive patterns that have been driving our search for connection, and to forge a path towards real, genuine intimacy. In unhealthy relationships, we often mistake our deep-seated need for validation as love. We crave the rush of endorphins that comes with being desired. But this high eventually wears off, leaving us clinging to a toxic dynamic for a sense of control. Behind every obsession lies a wounded ego, driven by an insatiable hunger for validation that stems from insecurity and a deep-seated fear of abandonment. This fear is what initially draws us to someone who seems to offer a sense of security or acceptance. The paradox is that our attraction to someone who exercises control over us stems from a twisted desire to be held captive by another's love, a desperate attempt to fill the void within ourselves left by past traumas or unrequited emotional needs. Unconscious motivations drive our choices in relationships, and often, these patterns are rooted in childhood experiences or family dynamics that have conditioned us to seek validation through unhealthy means. The desire for control is usually a response to a deep-seated fear of being powerless or abandoned. When we become obsessed, we're often self-deceived into believing that our partner's erratic or toxic behavior is somehow a manifestation of their deep love for us. But in reality, this is simply a reflection of their own insecurities and emotional unavailability. At the core of these unhealthy patterns lies a fundamental disconnection from our own emotions and needs, leading us to seek love and validation in all the wrong places. By acknowledging this disconnection and taking responsibility for our own healing, we can begin to break free from the cycle of obsession and cultivate healthier relationships. As we reflect on the complex dynamics driving our attraction to others, let's acknowledge that this journey towards self-discovery is often a difficult yet crucial path to enlightenment. I'd love to hear your observations in the comments below. What hidden patterns of attraction do you see within yourself or in those around you? Remember to subscribe for more in-depth explorations into human psychology, and together, let's continue to shed light on the intricacies that shape our connections.